What is up, my brothers and sisters, my agents of respect? It's your boy TreJuanJohnson back with another episode of the No Disrespect But podcast. Before we get started, make sure you guys like and subscribe to the channel. Always feel free to comment. Just please make sure you keep those comments respectful. And if you're interested in supporting your favorite podcaster, yours truly, the link to do so will be in the episode description. So the NFL season or NFL league year has started, and obviously there's been a ton of free agency signings, a few trades going on. But look, we're gonna keep this Saint centric because I got to talk to Who That Nation. Okay, there's been some murmurs, some groans, some displeasure that the Saints haven't necessarily done a ton, right? In terms of free agency and everything like that, and I guess splash moves. And I've heard a bunch of things of, oh, we're not really signing any younger guys. We basically re-signed the older guys, the roster we had last year. We're running it back. We're not learning our lesson. All these things, which I believe could be true in the sense that, or I can understand why our fan base would assume that and think that. But again, Who That Nation? What have we been begging for maybe the past 3 or 4 years, especially since Drew retired and heightened when Sean Payton retired and then, wasn't the Saints head coach anymore. We have been pushing for a rebuild, uh, not trying to push salaries down the road to compete now and try to compete for a Super Bowl, um, not trying to trade away for and being, crazy with first round picks and, you know, only trying to address needs and instead trying to get guys that are the best player available and um, getting the young quarterback conversation, um, not overpaying free agency as the Saints have been um, liable to do over the past few years. I mean, we've had some misses when you think about Jason David coming over from the Colts, had a big contract with us. Jamiris Byrd having a big contract with us. Um, can't even think of the edge rusher we signed. Um, he was one of the guys that we invested in heavily, and he got into some issues. So that was a miss. Danielle Ellerby was a miss. Um, I can go on and on about some of the misses we've had in free agency and spending big. Derek Carr was a miss, right? I mean, you at the very least expected this guy to help you compete for the division, win the division, which was an easy division at the time. I mean, you had no Tom Brady anymore. You had a rookie quarterback in Carolina. Had Baker Mayfield, who at that point was starting to become a journeyman, going to Tampa Bay. You thought this guy could come in and help steer the ship for you, and it just didn't happen, right? So that was probably our most recent miss. So we wanted to stay away from, in a way, betting against ourselves, or as I would say, pay the Saints tax, where you may have to pay a player above their respective market just to get them to sign with you. So those were things we have been seeing over the past few years, and we just wanted the team to stop. And I'll read you the signs or the signings that they have, and I looked it up, looking on my phone. So when you look at our signings, our first big signing, um, well, I'll start with the restructure. How about that? I'll start with the structure of Derek Carr's contract. I think when we restructured it, there was a lot of concerns that, and there still are concerns, right? That okay, they reconstructed Derek Carr's contract. He's getting $40 million. There's no way they're going to move off of this guy now. He's going to be the starting quarterback of the 2025 season. And here's the thing: he has a $60 million cap hit next year, almost $70 million. So we're going to restructure again. He's going to be our quarterback for the next 2 or 3 years. He won't be free until 2027 or 2028. We are just stuck with Derek Carr. Well, And then reports came out that made matters worse, saying that Derek Carr didn't even want to be here, which, if you guys are friends of the show, you know I've been talking about that for a long time, that Derek Carr did not want to be here, and that we didn't necessarily want him here either, but we have a reputation to protect. And the Saints' reputation is that they are player centric. They try not to do players wrong. They never want to be the one in the wrong when it comes to a player's unhappiness. And so they were willing to let Derek Carr explore his markets and everything like that. And his camp would make you believe or let you believe that he had a robust market and that had he been traded or released, he would already be another team starting quarterback. That's not necessarily the case. Were there some teams interested? Yes, not very many. The main one that had a level of interest, a high level of interest, was the Tennessee Titans, and for them having the top overall pick, there's a lot of things they can do with that, right? But there's also a lot of things they can do in terms of maybe trying to get a team to trade significant draft capital to get that top spot. And I think, that's where Tennessee is at this stage of the offseason. And so with the Saints kind of being against the clock of, hey, we got to figure out what we want to do with Derek Carr's contract, while also maintaining, and GM Mickey Loomis did say they wanted to be players in free agency this year. They were not players in free agency last year. He said he wanted to make a few more moves this year. And when you want to do that, you can't wait until the post June cut where a lot of fans want it done as well, especially when they heard that Derek Carr didn't want to be here. Well, why didn't we uh, do a post June 1st cut designation? We would have saved over $30 million. We'd had that to work with. Well, it's going to be hard. I mean, if I told you you can have 30 million, 30,000, well, we're going to do normal money. If I told you you can have $3,000 today, or you can wait a few more months and then you'll have $3,000, you're gonna want that today, right? To be able to do the things that you want to get done. It's not saying that you're in dire need and you're broke and all that type of stuff, but money is money. And if you feel like you can have that money now and you can do some things with it, you're going to accept that money now. And that's what the Saints were doing. They wanted to be able to have money, be cap compliant, make as many uh, or as minimal the amount of moves in regards to their veterans, their aging veterans, that, hey, we'll just restructure. We'll deal with Derek Carr and what he wants and what we want later. We'll have time. But right now, we need some money, or we want money right now. Like the HG or JG Wentworth, 877 cash now. You need money now. That's what the Saints needed. And so they did that. And one of the first things they did with their new influx of cash was their first big signing was one of their free agents being Chase Young. Now, Chase Young, he got a deal, 3-year deal, worked up to 57 million, but I think it was on the books like 3 years, 51 million or something like that. Um, which, you know, was a pretty good deal for him. Obviously, we signed him to a 1-year deal last year. He played all 17 games, led the team in pressures, um, didn't equate to a lot of sacks. I think he had 5.5 sacks, but when you looked at his pressure rate and his pass rush win rate, he kind of deserved to get paid. I mean, the guy's 25 years old, your best pass rusher on the team. You got to reward that. I mean, one of the reasons why you want to provide these incentive laden deals is that you want guys to prove that they can do what it takes to earn that money and earn a long term spot in your future. And the Saints did that. And the thing is, it was a 3-year deal. They didn't sign him to a 5-year deal. They didn't give him, even though he had top 10 metrics for an edge rusher, they didn't give him top 10 money. They gave him somewhere between the top 15, top 20, which is fine. And that means, and if he plays the whole contract, all 3 years, guy's still going to be 28, still in the prime of his career. And then you can do another deal, right? So I wasn't too upset about the deal because everything made sense. The guy was your best edge rusher last year. You go into a new scheme that maybe will stand him up more, allow him to use his quick twitch ability, and kind of get a little bit of an advantage over edges. And then you're hoping that, hey, we're adding some folks in the interior, which we'll get to in just a second. And this guy with what he's shown, that raw natural ability, maybe he can convert more of these pressures into sacks. And so you go from a top 10 metric to maybe a top five metric. And now you're talking about maybe from a sack total standpoint, being in those top 10 to top five metrics. And you're paying the guy at this point in time, it would be a discount for his services. And so that's what you're hoping that Chase Young can do. So that was a big priority right in the off season. You wanted to make sure you kept some of your guys, kept some of your young guys, and Chase Young was one of those guys you wanted to keep. And you were able to keep him. Now, of course, you lost the Paulson and Debo, but you lose the Paulson and Debo because you were going after one of the top, probably the top cornerback on the market in Charvarius Ward when he was leaving San Francisco. And here's the thing: Ward was of the mindset that he was going to join the New Orleans Saints. He was going to join Coach Staley, who was on the San Francisco 49ers staff last year. That was his mindset. And then the Indianapolis coach came in and just created a Godfather offer that he could not refuse and that the Saints would not go up. And here's the thing: that's a good thing. Yes, he's a great talent, but we aren't a team that's just a couple great talents away from being Super Bowl champions. And so you don't take that risk. That's a signing that maybe a year or two ago the Saints make because they're trying to avoid the rebuild. They make that signing. They pay that extra money that Indianapolis had offered and probably go up a little step further. And now you're looking saying, well, you paid a lot of money for that guy. And we don't think that was a good deal, but they're fighting, they're competing. And so this showed, in my opinion, a level of growth, right? That, hey, really good player. The sucky part is we lost a really good player in Paulson Debo, who was at a number that I think the Saints would have paid. He's getting 18 per from the New York Giants. But the Saints have maybe done 18 and a half, maybe 19. Hell, Saints could have came in at a 17 number and just had more guarantees. And because he's familiar with not necessarily the scheme, but familiar with our team and our culture, that's something that might have him stay. So he may take that discount. So who knows? But you know, that was something that, restructuring Carr allowed us to do, have that money to sign a guy like Chase Young. Then look, you got some small ones. You got Dante Pettis, wide receiver, return specialist, helps in that regard. But then another big signing, right? You get a Justin Reed. So you whiffed on Charvarius Ward. Somebody gave you you had a higher price point for him. Well, now you get Justin Reed, who I would argue was the top safety on the market. Super Bowl champion, two-time Super Bowl champion with the Kansas City Chiefs. Um, is kind of does everything that Tyrann Mathieu has done historically in his career. It honestly almost follows the same trajectory to a T. More so his start with the Houston and then going to Kansas City. Obviously, Tyrann Mathieu started with Arizona, then went to Houston, then went to Kansas City. So this was a really great signing. But all everybody talked about was, oh, well, they signed them, but they signed them to all this money and you don't have money. Well, they had the money because they restructured Derek Carr. You still have to spend the money. You still have to fill the roster. And just because you're rebuilding doesn't mean you have to have a bunch of me's out there playing for your team. You can still get top tier talent that's still in a respectable age bracket to where when you're really starting to get to that point where you want to establish a consistent Super Bowl contender, guys are still relatively young-ish and can be a part of that and help in instilling what it takes to win that championship and having guys who have done that. Of course, Justin was also a big help in signing him because we lost Will Harris. Will Harris signed elsewhere. You probably could have, got Will Harris and kept him for cheaper, but you get in my opinion, a better player at the safety position, makes it less of a need at that point. And you kind of got him for a bargain. I mean, what what did we pay him? We paid him 3 years, $31 million, 22 guaranteed. I mean, barely over 10 million a year when you kind of calculate it that way. That's kind of chump change for the safety market. We have safeties making 16 and $17 million a year, and you get one of the best safeties in the league at way less than that. So, hey, does a signing like that maybe signal to your fan base that hey, we definitely want to still try to compete and win championships? maybe. But at the same time, part of being in a rebuild is when you have expendable cash, but you can bring in a culture builder because you're rebuilding, right? You need winners in your culture because you've been losing for the past 4 years. Well, Justin Reed is a winner, and he pairs well with Tyrann Mathieu. They have good chemistry. They have a relationship. He's a Louisiana guy as well, so coming back home to play, this could be good for us. And so obviously your two biggest signings really of the offseason so far, Chase Young, re-signing him, Justin Reed. Then you bring back Juwan Johnson. Now look, I was not a fan of the Juwan Johnson signing, and not because of the whole money thing. I think he's getting paid again top 20 tight end play. I mean, the guy had five, he had career highs in receptions, yards, and touchdowns last year. So, again, you're rewarding guys for doing well. I think he could be doing better, a lot better, given what he was supposed to be, a former wide receiver, converting to tight end, being somewhat of a mismatch. He should be putting up better numbers on a consistent basis, not pretty much going through the motions 3 quarters of the year and then picking it up the final quarter of the year and then getting his, and pushing his numbers up to where it looks like he had a really good season. But when you look at the guarantees and you look where he ranks within the market, it's like, did I want the signing? No, but is it a bad signing? Probably not. I mean, top 20, 25 pay. By the time some of these young guys are getting paid, he's going to be even lower on the totem pole in terms of the average value a year of a tight end. And you can really theoretically get out of it in a year or two. It's not as bad as you think. And then here's the thing that sold it for me, right? Head coach Kellen Moore, my client, as I say, he was the one that sealed the deal for Juwan Johnson. Juwan Johnson gave him, purportedly, he said he gave him a call to say, hey, why do you guys want me back? And Kellen Moore said some really good things. And Kellen Moore's success in his career as a play caller with the tight end position, if he has a vision for Juwan Johnson that maybe other coaches couldn't tap into. And like, here's the thing. We forget the first year Juwan Johnson made the transition to tight end from wide receiver, he did really well. Sean Payton had a plan for making that switch, and he utilized that, especially in the red zone. And so maybe now having a play caller come in that has a plan for Juwan Johnson can maybe put him in better positions to be successful. Who knows what it could be, especially when you're talking about a play caller that has done well historically with tight ends in his career. So wasn't crazy about that. So look, I just talked about three signings. Two of the three were players already on your team. Then you bring in Isaac Yiadom, who played for you a couple years ago, did really well in spot duty, having to start a few games. Goes, takes a deal with San Francisco. Doesn't start a lot for him, but definitely plays, learns the system, plays under Brandon Staley, which I believe this is his third stint under Brandon Staley at this point in time in his career. And he comes in. You signed him to a 3-year deal. Money's not crazy. Um, what is this? I don't even know the money we gave him. I don't even know the money we gave him. But I know it was a 3-year deal. Wasn't like a crazy amount of money. And look, this is a guy that one can come in, compete for the outside cornerback position. Opposite, I think Kool-Aid is going to be your starting cornerback, and I think Isaac Yiadom can come in and compete with. I mean, if you want Alontae Taylor to be an outside guy or be your inside guy, you got a couple other guys on the roster that you can compete with and maybe be your starting cornerback. I think he showed flashes with the Saints a couple years ago as a starter. And maybe now coming in, knowing Brandon Staley's defense, he has a leg up and can really help some of the other guys learn it and get adjusted to it. You can always draft another cornerback. You can always sign another cornerback. You know, we've talked about Asante Samuel Jr. being an option that we're looking at heavily. But Isaac Yiadom is a really great guy to have, even if it's just from a depth perspective. Injuries happen. We have to be ready for it. I think Isaac has shown, at least as a Saint, that he can come in and provide some serviceable play for us. So I thought that was a really good signing. Jack Stahl, tight end, really a good run blocking tight end. Played for Philly, played for Miami. Like, I mean, I not a signing you go woohoo for, but it happens, right? Um, and then our most recent signing was Will Clapp. Um, Obviously, we know him, plays a center position, has played guard position. So he can come in, maybe compete for left guard, can be serviceable depth at both guard positions. Obviously, I think he'll make most impact as a backup for Eric McCoy if he continues to experience some of his injury issues, which we hope he doesn't, right? And not to mention, we did trade for Gotcha from the Patriots. I think we traded a sixth or seventh round pick or something like that. Then signed him to kind of a new year, or restructured his deal, going to be a nose tackle. Um, we restructured some contracts with Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Tyrann Mathieu, among others. Obviously, restructured uh, Nathaniel Shepard. Yeah, Nathaniel Shepard. I think he goes by Nate, but I think it's Nathaniel Shepard. Um, and so we kept a few guys, right? And everything that was being talked about was, oh my God, we're keeping the same guys, or either we're keeping the same guys, or even the guys that we went and got that were external to the Saints organization. It was like, oh my God, we probably spent way too much money. And when you talk about a Justin Reed, right? But here's the thing, y'all. This is what rebuilding teams do, right? This we have to welcome the rebuild. This is the experience, right? You prioritize the guys on your team. One, because you might get them at a cheaper rate. Also, when it comes to your aging vets, you can kind of restructure their deals. And while it may look like, oh, they're just kicking a can down the road again, well, no, you're making it to where you can get out of some of these guys deals a little bit earlier, and the cap hits aren't as egregious as they might have been. So a Cam Jordan, he takes a pay cut. You can move off in a year. Tyrann Mathieu takes a pay cut. You can move off in a year. Demario Davis restructures, opening up $8 million in cap space. He can retire after next season. We're still dealing with the Ryan Ramczyk situation, which that he still hasn't announced his retirement, as far as I know. So that's kind of weird. I mean, I don't know what we're gonna do with that, but we need to figure that situation out. You know, is he healthy enough to play? Is he retired? I really don't know, but um, there are aging guys that you can move off from. You've signed some of your young guys. Uh, Kool-Aid doesn't have to be paid yet. Alante Taylor will be up, I think, after this season. Um, Chris Olave obviously will be up. Rashid Shaheed technically will be up. So you still have some young guys that you will have to pay, but probably have to pay like an extremely top dollar unless they just go crazy this next season and they try to drive with their market or whatever it might be. But this is what we have to get used to. Like the team one isn't going to. I'll put it this way. Let's talk about rebuilds. There's different stages, right? But let's talk about early stages of a rebuild. Early stages of a rebuild, teams aren't going to spend a crazy amount of money on external guys. Any level of high income that they pay, or high dollar accounts that they pay, is going to be to some of their guys. More than likely, it's going to be some of their younger guys, like a Chase Young or TreJuanJohnson is still only 28, right? Then you're going to bring in some veterans at key positions at a lower rate. You bring in a Gotcha, cheap veteran. You restructure Nathan Shepard at a cheaper deal. Um, Cam Jordan takes a pay cut. Tyrann Mathieu takes a pay cut. Um, you're bringing in, like I said, Justin Reed at a cheaper rate compared to, I mean, what somebody of his caliber probably should be getting paid, right? Then you look to the draft. Then you're gonna look to undrafted free agency. Then you'll start to look and see, okay, who are some of the guys that didn't really get picked up through free agency, but we need camp bodies, and you go get them. And what you hope, right, is that the young guys you've probably already invested draft capital in. So we have some young guys on the roster already. You're hoping one, they start to make some of these older guys expendable. You hope your new draft class makes guys expendable. And you hope maybe some of those young, cheap guys that you brought in make some of these aging vets and maybe some of your higher price guys expendable and you can move off. And that's kind of the cycle you go in when you're in the rebuild. That's how you construct your roster. It won't be flashy signings. Um, and even some of the cheap guys, like we saw the Eagles get two really cheap guys. And I think who did they get? I think it's Ish. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. And then they got Ojolari, right? Uche and Ojolari. And it's like, oh, we could have gotten them for that level. Yeah. But also you're a team with a new scheme, you're coming back off of a bad year defensively. So maybe these guys are trying to figure out, I don't know. Like if I'm gonna go to them, I'm gonna need more. Whereas if I go to the defending Super Bowl champions and I saw what they Zach Baum was able to make in their system, I see the way they use edge rushers in their system, and knowing my ability based on what we have on the front line, what we have on the back end, I will make a hell of a lot more money than I am on maybe a struggling roster or a roster that isn't that good. So of course I'm gonna take less to go join the defending Super Bowl champions because I've seen them change lives of edge rushers. Like you have. And when you're trying to think about, you're still young, you're trying to think about what's best for you in your career, that makes a ton of sense. And again, that shows the Saints not paying that tax right now. Cooper Cup, he wanted 15 million a year. Saints were willing to do the 15 million. What they weren't willing to do was give you 15 million over a period of 3 years for 45 million, and majority of that being guaranteed. That was good. We didn't do what we normally do. A year or two ago, you're giving Cooper Cup that salary, probably a little bit more to ensure you get him. Now you're saying, hey, you know what, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, you guys have to step up. We got to step up in our scouting department and actually get some pass catchers on this team. There's still some viable veterans that, hey, we don't necessarily have to sign them right now. We can wait until the draft, see, let the smoke clear a little bit, and then go get one guy or get a couple guys to be, veteran uh, presences in that locker room. So there's still time. I mean, I think we act like the season begins tomorrow. Like we're going to be suiting up week one tomorrow, and it's not. I think we have 50 something players on the roster. We need to have 90 by training camp. So there's going to be a lot of things that happen that's part of the rebuild. And here's the thing I, as a fan, would appreciate, right, if we stop associating rebuilding with losing. They aren't the same thing. They aren't mutually exclusive. Like just because you're rebuilding doesn't mean you're losing games. How do I know that? The well, actually 4-time defending NFC South champions have been in a rebuild the past 2 years. How do I know? Tom Brady retires, they absorb his cap hit. They let guys walk on both sides of the ball. They bring in a Baker Mayfield on a cheap contract to compete for the starting job. He gets it. They make it to the divisional round of the NFC playoffs. They re-sign him, not to a crazy amount, but they resign him. They're able to keep guys. They're still letting guys go. They're still drafting and trying to figure out how to fit key areas of the team. So let some of their DBs go. Let some of their linebackers go. Let some of their edge rushers go. Let some of their pass catchers go. Let some of their backfield go. And they just they've continued to rebuild. So we see a team that technically was in their rebuilding phase. They got killed by the cap. They couldn't do a crazy amount. They prioritized guys in their locker room to sign, not bring a bunch of guys from external sources, right? And then the guys they did bring from the external side of things were immediate contributors, veterans in certain respects. They had a cheap quarterback who on a prove it deal. He did what he had to do. They re-signed him, but not like a top market signing, just a kind of a middle of the pack tier quarterback contract of what he deserved, I think. And I think Baker Mayfield understood that. And again, they continue to prioritize their guys. The Buccaneers aren't making waves right now in free agency because they are still very much so in a rebuild. It just looks a different way. And we don't equate them with rebuilding because, oh, well, they won a division 2 years in a row too, without Tom Brady. But guess what? They're still rebuilding. They aren't the team yet that they want to be from a consistent Super Bowl contending standpoint. Guess who else is rebuilding? The Washington Commanders. Oh, you mean the Washington Commanders that got the quarterback made to the NFC Championship game? Yes, those Washington Commanders. How do I know they're rebuilding? Because they still don't have an offensive line. They're still trying to build out their wide receiver core to help Terry McLaurin out. Obviously, want to help Jaden Daniels out. They're looking at ways to help with the backfield and and kind of take some of that pressure off of Jaden Daniels to be a superhero because you want to have a true running game. Actually, on the defense side of the ball, they're letting guys go. They're getting rid of some of their first round picks. They're getting rid of guys who have aging guys who have been a part of this roster for a long time, like a Jonathan Allen, right? And they're moving off of these guys, and they're saying, "Hey, some of these young guys we drafted, you got to step up. You got to, you got to play in these positions, because your contract says, hey, if you do well, we have time and we can do some other things. We can spend money elsewhere, not having to worry about, addressing your position with a veteran, with an expensive veteran, because right now we don't really want to spend. Yes, we made the NFC Championship game last year, but we're not going to rush. We're going to continue to build around Jaden Daniels and get to a point where we can consistently be in NFC Championship games. Um, Rams, believe it or not, Rams, they're rebuilding. Matthew Stafford is towards the end of his career. You lose an Aaron Donald, so you start to invest heavily in that defensive side of the ball. This year, now that you know Matthew Stafford's kind of on his last leg as a professional quarterback, you're probably going to start to see more of an investment offensively. But they are still very much so a rebuilding team. They aren't spending a crazy amount of money. The big signing they had was getting Devontae Adams. That's really it. They're not going to spend a ton of money, and they're also not where they were when they were, building a Super Bowl roster where their GM was like, Les Snead was like, F those picks. I'm trading them away. That rookie's not going to do anything for me right now. I'm going to get veteran guys that can help us win now. Well, they're not doing that anymore. They're protecting their first round picks, right? And they're getting some really talented players to hope in the hopes that, hey, with Matthew Stafford and where he is, yes, he can possibly still lead us to a Super Bowl run, but we need to continue to build our team to where when that next guy comes in, we can have at least a level of talent around him to where he can continue to be back on that pedestal. We were consistently Super Bowl contenders. So I use a lot of those teams in different areas to show that rebuilding looks different for different teams, but yet it's still a rebuild. And you don't have to be a loser, so to speak, just to rebuild because we've been losing. And if you ask anyone in that locker room, you ask anyone in the organization, they will tell you that no, we haven't been in a rebuild, but you've missed the playoff 4 years in a row. So you've been doing something. So I think what the Saints are when they say we want to win, they're not lying. They want to win. But that doesn't mean that, oh, we don't want to get new fresh blood into this organization. We don't want to, you know, take our lumps a little bit, but have some young guys that can really come in, especially at the quarterback position. But that just doesn't mean they want to lose. They want to win. The best recipe to getting better and being a consistent contender is to win games. So you do want them to continue to bring people in that's going to help you win games, but also at the same time, just not at a price point that just doesn't warrant the the level that they're playing at and what they bring. Like if your only value to us is maybe another win on the on the record, you can't get paid top dollar to be a part of New Orleans Saints. And I think that's where the organization is growing. Like you paid Derek Carr not to give you 2 additional wins a year. You paid him to give you 3 to 4 additional wins a year because that's 10 and 11 wins a season. And he didn't give us that. Yes, there are other circumstances, but that didn't happen. And so when that doesn't happen, then you have no. So don't mistake rebuilding of, hey, we're going to lose games for a long time. Do you think that Kellen Moore left the Philadelphia Eagles to lose games? No, he wants to win. He wants to win as soon as this upcoming season. And guess what, fans? Guess what, Who Dat Nation? That's okay if we do, but it has to be a certain way, in my opinion. Um, let's say Derek Carr is a starting quarterback and we win 10 games and we're a wild card team and we lose. Okay, well, what next? Do we have to re-sign Derek Carr? Do we restructure it and then he's on the books for even longer? You ask yourself, are these players, is their ceiling only getting us to the wild card? If their ceiling is only getting us to the wild card, well, you can't commit to that long term, right? But if in the midst of winning, let's say you have a rookie quarterback and we get to the wild card and we lose, but you say, hey, we don't know exactly what this young man is going to be. We don't know exactly what this team is going to be around this young man. But if we can continue to build around that and that young man grows as a professional quarterback, well, we go from wild cards to divisionals to conference championships to Super Bowls. And hell, if we're lucky, the time on that reduces drastically. Whereas by year two, you're in a title hunt. Lamar's first year as a starter, like first year as a starter in the title hunt. That's what you want. I mean, hell, even whether you believe it or not, the Ravens were in a rebuild when they drafted Lamar Jackson and trying to figure out their team and what they were going to be. So that's the situation that I think the Saints find themselves in now, where they have made the decision that we won't rebuild, we'll retool. That's what they'll say. But understanding that what we do going forward has to look different. We can't rely solely on these older guys. We need to draft well, we need to scout well, we need to draft well, we need to develop well, and we need these young guys to take hold of these spots. Because they take hold of these spots, that buys us time, that buys us 2, 3 years or so, maybe even more in certain instances to continue to get their replacements. So let's say a guy is performing phenomenally. I mean, one, you either have to pay that guy or you can say, hey, I got another guy right behind him that I can slide in, and he's been doing well as well. And you put yourself in a situation where you're being extremely selective with who you pay, but more times than not, you're going to make the right decision of who you commit to long term, and you're trusting your drafting philosophy that, hey, we're getting the right guys in the building. We're always a step ahead instead of a step behind. And that's where the Saints have to get back to. I think, once we really started getting consistent and being in the title hunt again, that was where we were so good, where we had some good drafts, we had some depth, but then we started getting to a point where those guys were outperforming. We didn't draft well enough, right? We didn't draft well enough to have guys behind them. And so when we decided not to pay those guys, we suffered. And we were either forced to redraft and hope it works out or overspend at that position in free agency and pray to God those guys worked out. And it just hasn't happened over the past few years. So all I have to say is this, Who That Nation. We're okay. The season does not begin tomorrow. We have time. We have time to add players that fit our defensive scheme. We have time to add players that fit our offensive scheme. Free agency is still going on. Obviously, draft evaluation is going on. We'll have the NFL draft. We'll still have a level of free agency and getting guys in before all the camps start. And then even when camps start, we'll still have roster moves happening. So once we get to September, really, and we know who our team is going to be, that's when we can really start to judge this team. But trying to judge them in March, it's just a waste of our time. It's not good for our health. And we're honestly just not buying truly into what we asked for, which is a rebuild. Can ask for a rebuild and then wants to sign everyone. Can ask for a rebuild and try to name 40 different positions for us to draft. Or, hey, we don't want to draft a quarterback. We don't want to take the lumps of a rookie quarterback. Like, you have to be willing to take what comes with rebuilding. And if you can't, then just understand that maybe don't ask for that anymore. Maybe pray for us to continue winning, always push to win. Pittsburgh Steelers, they're going to always push to win. They're going to figure it out. They're going to try to bring somebody in. They're going to always push to win. And there's going to be a level of mediocrity. There's going to be, hey, we don't have any losing seasons, but it's been a while since we went to a conference championship. It's been even longer since we won the Super Bowl. But no losing seasons. If that's what we want our mantra to be, then sure. But if you want your mantra to be, we need to create a whole new regime. We need to get back to winning, a culture of winning and always being in the hunt, well, we're going at it right now. The Saints are going at it the right way. Be patient, be understanding, and we'll be okay. And once we get into the summer, that's when we can truly evaluate this team and start talking about roster construction. And then even more when we get to the actual season of how personnel is doing, how our coaching staff is doing, the draft picks that we had, and how are they performing. Obviously, that will reflect on our scouting department and our front office. There will be times to be critical. There will be times to be supportive. But right now, let's not overdo it. We're in a rebuild. It sucks. It's going to have its growing pains. It's not always going to look pretty, but nevertheless, it's the process that we ask for, and ultimately, it's the process that we need. Got it? All right. Well, look, and the show as I always do. If there's anything I said that offended anyone, look, it's a good thing. It's an opportunity for me to learn, and it's an opportunity for you to teach me. All I ask is that you keep it respectful. Peace.